the power system is going through unprecedented change at the moment. So on one side, in terms of the supply of power onto the grid, we're trying to change that so we get 80% of it supplied by renewable energy, and intermittent renewable energy at that. And then on the other side, the demands that are being placed on the power system by consumers are changing, not only in terms of the amount that they're consuming, but also the nature of the consumption, the time of the consumption, and also the lack of diversity. So it really now has become something that's changed from just being important in terms of my view and my professional career around this, but its importance is really being recognized as being critical to the future operation of the power system. So I'm really, first of all, I suppose, quite keen to draw out some of the points around the challenges that are faced by the integration of renewable energy, and what are those challenges and where demand response and flexibility play a role.
I can jump in and shed some first thoughts on that. So, fundamentally, we're moving from a system that's been dominated by, conventional power generation stations, which are, first of all, dispatchable. There's no intermittency there. So we're moving from a system dominated by kind of dispatchable, controllable plants to one where we've got huge swathes of intermittent power generation on the system. We have to be able to cope with the periods where the wind doesn't blow. On the other side, we're moving from the system where the conventional power stations provided a kind of whole host of characteristics to the system that made it inherently very, very stable. So they were providing inertia to the system and other kind of reactive power and fault resistance and things like that. So we're moving to a world where we've got lots and lots of renewables, which are non-synchronous technologies, and so they need to be complemented by other measures on the system to ensure that the system has the inertia and the ability to to ride through various faults that can happen on the system and stay stable and resilient. So we really see, we need to complement those renewables to enable us to get to the penetrations of renewables that we need to meet our climate action plan targets. We need a suite of other technologies on the system, be that batteries, synchronous condensers, and demand flexibility that can complement the renewables and ensure that that the system remains as stable and resilient as it was in the past, with a completely different kind of portfolio of technologies.
So I suppose what we see is that we've really, I suppose, to date, the operation of the power system was fundamentally based around characteristics that were implicit with thermal power plants, and we took those characteristics for granted in terms of the not only their reliability but their consistency of delivery, the inertia of the power plants as we talk about in that. And when we replace that with renewable energy, it's replacing one facet, and we have to supplement it with others. And I suppose a lot of the technologies that are often looked towards are very expensive solutions in terms of bringing in additional battery storage onto the system, synchronous condensers, continuing to maintain the generating fleet as well on the system. And I guess we've seen that demand response and customer flexibility can deliver a lot of those services.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So my current role is focused on market design, and as we're kind of as markets globally are moving away from all of those nice characteristics that conventional power plants provided naturally as a kind of inherent byproduct, systems and markets worldwide are looking at saying, okay, we need to be able to actually define those different characteristics that the system has become reliant on and explicitly value those so we can find other technologies to meet them. So looking at, okay, what inertia does the system need? What kind of fast response services does the system need? What reactive power capabilities does the system need? And creating markets so that the new technologies that can provide those can be brought to bear, and investors can bring those projects forwards to complement renewables.
Yeah, and the way I've kind of visualized a lot of those services is around, I always picture the system like a seesaw, and that we have electricity customers on one side and we have generation on the other. And if you've got a perfectly balanced seesaw, even if there's 1,000 tons on one side, on each side, if it's perfectly balanced and you put so much as a pebble on one side, it just tips. And where we've had thermal plant on the system, what it's effectively done is it's given us big springs on that generation side, big springs like the dampers in cars that, like the springs in cars, that ultimately help to slow the reaction that allow us to actually, operate the power system. If there's a problem or changes on one side or the other, we have time to counteract those problems. And whereas I think what a lot of people don't realize is that we still need to have some of that spring until we find alternate sources of quick response, for example, that can step in very quickly. You need to have that spring effect. So as you increase the amount of renewable energy, which doesn't give that whatsoever in terms of like wind and solar, you're taking away the thermal power plants that are giving you that effect, that inertia, that spring effect. But you need to, because you need to have some of it, it places a ceiling on the amount of renewable energy that the power system can actually use, because you have to maintain this. So the more we help to replace those characteristics from thermal power stations with other technologies that can sit in the background ready to step in, the less of that spring we need from the thermal power plants, and the more we raise the ceiling on the amount of renewable energy that can actually be usefully used on the system. And, so I think that it's not only a fascinating area, but it's one that I think is very seldom understood. People think that intermittency is the major issue, whereas there's clearly other facets that need to be addressed.